Hello everyone and welcome to the Flicks Forum podcast with Jesse, Heater and MJ. In this week's episode we'll be discussing Netflix's 20th film, the 2016 drama Barry, directed by Vikram Gandhi, starring Devon Terrell, Anta Taylor-Joy, Jason Mitchell, Ashley Judd, Jenna Elfman, Ellar Coltrane, Avi Nash and Linus Roache. Good afternoon, co-fellows.
Hey boys.
How you going?
Good, how are we going?
Yes, good.
Pretty good.
Alright, this is, I've seen this film. Just putting it out there early on. This is the
So have I.
That's what I'm here for.
This is the second time I've seen this film.
Hey.
So looking forward to having a chat about Barry.
Must be about the third one that you've seen before
Yeah.
we recorded the podcast, I reckon.
ARQ.
Hilarious.
Hey, before we start, we need to start saying before our episodes that we're gonna talk about spoilers in
yeah.
our episodes.
Spoiler warning.
I think we've taken for granted in our first 19 episodes, but we're learning from our mistakes of the past. But we are planning on going quite deep into this film. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, go watch it and then come back to us.
And make sure you do come back.
And this is our last 2016 film.
It is.
It is.
That's exciting. We've got through 2016 almost.
It's been a good start.
Yeah, episode 20. Celebrate. Woo. All right, let's go around the table. We're going to do our fast flicks where we're each going to do a 30-second summary of the film. And I think MJ is going to hit us off today.
Love to. All right. Following the early life of Barack Obama as he finds his feet in New York City, set in 1981 and not covering too much more than a year of his life, we are introduced to Barry as a young and ambitious student who is struggling to figure out who he really is and where he fits in a world of racism, poverty, and confusion.
Good. Heater.
Good, yeah. A biographical drama about Barack Obama during his college years in New York City as he is faced with racism and the struggle of identifying himself and how he fits in.
Nice. I've gone with the short flicks today. So I've said a short look into Obama's life in New York City, 1981.
Short and concise.
Done.
Yeah.
Dusted. All right, let's have a look at this film.
Hey, biopic or biopic? Am I stupid for not being too sure what it's supposed to be?
I go with biopic.
What do you do?
That's a tough one. Biopic. I think biopic.
What was the other option?
Biopic.
Nah, that sounds
Biopic.
silly.
I'm going to go biopic.
All right. I've never been 100% sure.
I think biopic sounds better.
I think biopic sounds better.
Biopic sounds what it should be, but biopic rolls off
Is
the
it a
tongue.
biography or a biography?
Hey, if we want to talk about the English language, sometimes we break rules.
Well, Jesse does have a dictionary here, so...
I know, true. Sorry, I can't help out here. So let's have a look at it. There's a little bit we can talk about here, I think, with the film history, a little bit of info about the film. Heater, you're pretty good with these usually. Hit us off. Give us something that you found out.
Well, like a lot of our previous few films, I reckon, it premiered at the 2016 Toronto International Film Festival.
It sure did.
Very popular film festival for Netflix films.
I also think it's probably the timing. We've watched a whole bunch of films that just got released around this time that they would have either bought after watching them at that film festival or released them.
Well, Netflix acquired the rights shortly afterwards.
So it's purely a timing thing, I think, and because we've watched a whole bunch in a row that released around the same
Yeah,
time,
around the same time.
It feels like it will be.
Well, yeah, so
pretty
TIFF in
fun.
September and then Netflix put it on the 16th of December. And I read that it debuted during the final days of Obama's presidency. So they sort of had a
okay.
strategic timing
it's good
around
timing.
their release.
Which is why, again, I don't remember this when it came out, but I'm assuming in the States it must seem pretty big. Netflix being a big player at the time still, and
It's probably good to see like the ratings and stuff of Netflix, like how many people saw that in the
mate,
first
it'd be nice to
few.
know every single episode we've recorded. Netflix, if you're listening, you don't have to release them to everyone. Just let us know.
So obviously the title of the film is Barry because that was Obama's nickname.
Did you know that previously? Because I had no idea.
Nah, no idea.
Nah, I didn't know
And
either.
it didn't even click that his name's Barack. Who would have been called Barry? As soon as I first heard this, I was like, of course.
Yeah.
It's right in front of me.
It sort of probably ties in a little bit later on as well about him trying to find himself as well and trying not to, be too different to everyone else. So the film's inspired by Obama's novel from 1995, Dreams from My Father. Almost an autobiography. Autobiography, split those words up. He reflects on his earlier life and his struggle with race, and a lot of this is in the film.
Yeah.
It's weird because 2016 there was another film on Obama that was released at the same time. It was called Southside with You. I haven't seen this film.
I haven't either.
I haven't either. Yeah, but
I just heard what it's about.
so it came out, and then the production of this film went into production a month after that film premiered at Sundance. So obviously similar sorts of films at the same time.
Have you seen Southside, MJ?
No, and I hadn't even heard of it.
I hadn't heard of it until
Yeah. So Charlotte, the main love interest in the film, based off a group of girls in Obama's life.
I was super curious about this. I think
Yeah.
this was the first thing I tried to look up. I'm like, who's Charlotte? Because she comes off looking pretty good.
Yeah.
But no, just like a amalgamation of a bunch of girls that he dated.
I like this one. So the script was written by this guy called Adam Mansbach, and his claim to fame is he wrote the children's book Go the F to Sleep. So I was like,
That's good.
So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, critical. What about the consensus of this film?
Pretty positive from what I saw.
Yeah, generally middling to positive. I would probably say.
Well, this is probably on the higher end on Rotten Tomatoes. It had 46 reviews, 80%. So that's pretty high compared to some of the films
Absolutely.
we've seen.
Yeah, I think we're probably because we've had some stinkers on here in terms of critical consensus. It is nice to get something a bit more popular.
Got a 3.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd from 2,500 ratings.
But only had a 54% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So audience maybe not in line with critics.
Critics liked it a bit more.
Yeah. So filmed obviously in and around New York. There were no other real scenes. I think mainly New
Couldn't
York.
find anything besides that. Yeah.
Yeah. Find anything else?
No.
All right. Let's have a look.
There actually wasn't that much on there.
It was so Netflix acquired it for about $4.5 million. They reckon that was the initial bid was around the $4.5 million range. It was a very hot property after the Toronto Film Festival, so it was Black Bear Pictures along with Kinetic Media. So Black Bear Pictures have done films like The Imitation Game, Suburbicon, Happy Time Murders, Gold, and Kinetic Media have more of a financier, but they've been involved in Green Book more recently, Boyhood, which obviously the lead from Boyhood was in this.
Yep.
Kids Are Alright. So it's a couple of good production companies put this together, and then Netflix swooped in pretty heavily to
based on those other films that you speak about, that you'd think
they know what they're doing.
Know what they're doing.
Mm.
What about some characters?
Well, there's one that was pretty significant.
Who? I don't know. I'm confused.
I thought Devon Terrell was incredible as Barry, and I'm going to call him Barry throughout this because
It's his name in the movie.
If you had no idea who Obama was, you would have no reason to think that this guy was called Barack Obama until almost the final scene. So
Yeah.
and I do like the fact they kept that very separate. They made a point of him being Barry. But I thought he was awesome. Like I felt like his mannerisms, his speech, and his general aura, I really did feel like I was watching Obama on screen. Like, it was nuts. I thought he was great.
It was his feature film debut.
Yeah.
And I grew
Born in Western Australia.
Yeah.
Born in America.
Born in America, moved to Western
moved
Australia.
here,
Yeah.
No, I agree with MJ.
I was 5, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought he was fantastic. Just the way he spoke. I thought he was incredible. It was really...
I thought the Salim dude, he did a pretty good Obama impersonation as well.
That was a good impersonation.
I loved Salim. God, he was fantastic. He was my favourite character. Loved him.
My favourite character was Charlotte. I thought she was amazing. I mean, just her character and the way that she was accepting, and she was happy to change anything for him. Like Thanksgiving plans, he was a bit of a not a nice guy to her. She's like, I'll organise it so you can be involved. And there's that scene where she's like, I love you, and he gave her donuts and sort of
the classic
thank you, and I actually believed she loves him. I believed that deep down.
Sure. There was something about him that she just.
And I was thinking through this whole film, like, Michelle must be the best wife in the world to pick her over this Charlotte chick.
Well, she was so I guess understanding and accommodating. Like obviously different people in different worlds, but she was completely open to. I guess
everything.
Yeah, not having things her way to suit him and what he needed. She was fantastic.
In a world where nobody else was really like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like she was like a security blanket for him. No matter what he did, no matter what situation happened, he could go to her and she was like, I'm here, I'm in. And that's why I was so curious to find out who it was based on, because I'm like, this girl's a rock star. Like,
she was, very good. So the director, Vikram Gandhi, it's his first feature film. But he did a doco called Kumari, and I can sort of see that, his documentarian skills in this, because it sort of felt like you were watching a documentary almost. I liked it. It was like watching a documentary on this guy.
Definitely. Yeah. It was like
You can see why they picked him to direct this. Yeah.
It was good. Did a good job.
What about the rest of the cast? I thought overall the cast was pretty good.
I thought they all were pretty good. I can't remember his name. His basketball friend. He was really
TJ?
good. TJ, yeah.
PJ?
PJ. It was PJ.
sorry, PJ.
He was good. I guess at the start when you thought, he was a bit of a jerk. I won't swear. I'm not going to swear. But and then like he gets to know him more and talk to him and stuff. I thought PJ was great.
Yeah, it was all pretty good in terms of performances here.
Yeah.
Again with Devon Terrell standing out.
Oh, he was fantastic.
All right, so let's talk about some scenes. What about this film? What stood out to us? What made it? What did we really like? I feel we're all a little bit slow today. Let's go. It's been a long day.
I'll start and say any scene with Salim in it for me was fantastic. The two ones when Barry thinks that someone's broken into his house and it's just Salim in there trying to look for pot, and they had that conversation about how he'd spent that night and he got back there and he's like, can I borrow some cab fare? And do you think there's a correlation between all the coke you do and you now being broke? I thought that scene was really good. And when they're in the bathroom and Barry's trying to tie his tie and Salim is offering him some different ways on how he could present himself to Charlotte's parents, I thought that was hilarious.
Do we know if Salim was based on anybody?
Don't know.
I couldn't say.
Should look that up.
But I really enjoyed his comical input during the film.
I just loved the idea, and this is straight away, like the opening scene. I love the idea that Obama slept on the street in his first night in New York City. It really set up his like zest for life and romanticized view of New York City that gets turned on its head really quickly, if not immediately. So he's in the school or in the college, and he gets booted out, and straight away he's like, because he was just sitting and just wanting to take it all in, and very quickly figured out that wasn't actually the New York that he was coming to.
Yeah. In reflection, like that scene you speak about at the start, I liked towards the end there was this montage where he was running, then he was reading, and then he's walking, then he's shooting hoops, and he's at a bar with Charlotte, running, writing Sue's dad, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, he walks past those dogs that he walked past at the start, and, like, at the start he was, like, a bit taken aback by them, but at the end he just keeps walking. So I liked that scene from the start, came back, and, he's a changed sort of person. So I like that.
The first classroom scene where they're debating with the students, so that was really good as well. That was
really more
well.
of that.
Yeah, was hoping for more. I guess you see that first one, I'm like, oh, that was really good, but then you don't get any more. But yeah, I thought that was really good. I even liked before that when he's flying into JFK Airport, and you've got this view of looking out the plane window, looking out over the city of this this big sort of city. I thought that was cool, sort of setting the city up. And it starts off you showing him as a chain smoker.
Oh,
massively!
My God, he smoked a lot.
I knew Obama smoked because I knew like when he was president, there was like this talk about him smoking. All that
He
sort of
didn't just smoke; he was a chain smoker. Like that was ridiculous.
I did a cigarette count because I went back and every time he lit up a cigarette, I counted 9 times in the film.
Oh, jeez,
that's a lot in an hour and 40-minute film.
I would have said it was more than that.
Yeah,
I thought he was constantly smoking. That was really surprising because I guess I don't really know much about him at all.
Yeah.
So I didn't know kind of bad he was a smoker and kind of that campaign thing. But yeah, that just really surprised me. I'm like, oh wow, this guy smokes a lot.
So I liked the scenes with Barry's mum. I thought she didn't really have a big role, and I would have liked her to be in it more. But I thought the scenes with her were really really good.
That was Ashley Judd's role.
It was Ashley Judd, yeah.
Yeah, she did well. She played it well, I thought.
Yeah, I thought she was really good. I liked at the start there was like this scene where they talk. I think it might have been in the background on the TV. There was a thing about Ronald Reagan didn't have any moral authority, and there was lots of talk about politics and all that sort of stuff throughout the film. And I thought it was interesting that they picked I know Reagan was president in the 80s, but I thought it was interesting because Reagan was like the first sort of celebrity president of America. Like he was a Hollywood star before he became president, and it's like interesting to think that Obama's going to follow because he was sort of the next sort of he was like a celebrity president when he was president. So I just liked that sort of little
right now there's a legit celebrity president
there, yeah, and that's where we're sort of going, isn't it? So yeah, I thought that was good.
I do believe that Salim was based on a real person.
No, good.
That's cool.
I wish I had done more research into it and trying to skim read things now. But, I do think it was based. So I'm not saying this exact person, but it was pretty similar. So
another scene that stood out for me was at the end, towards the end, Barry answers the phone and finds out about his dad's death. And there was this nice split in the middle where you've just got the phone sitting in the middle, and then Barry's on the left, sort of down and out, and then on the right, Salim comes in and he's talking about Wall Street,
talking and going around. Yeah,
and I thought that was really well done.
That was a really good scene as well.
He was completely shut out.
Yeah.
you could have, and I like the fact they showed everything else that was happening in
Yeah.
the apartment at the time, and he was completely numb to it.
And I think that leads on to when they're in the backseat of the car driving at the wedding. I thought that was a really good scene as well, where Charlotte's trying to get more out of him and stuff, and how, ask him if he's nervous, but tell him, no, it looks like he's going into battle. Like, I thought that was really good in the backseat of the car as well.
Line, that one as well.
She said, she was like along the lines. He's like, you feel far away, and he's like tried to cuddle her, and she's like, not that sort of,
not physically far away. Yeah, that was a nice.
And also, like at the end, there's that scene where he goes out to the basketball court and just starts playing horse with the kid on the court, and like, where are you from? The kid's like, Riverside, and Barry's like, I'm from a lot of places, but I live here now, sort of thing. So it sort of brought the movie
kind of that accepting of,
massively.
he was always kind of out.
How many times in the film did someone ask where he's from? It was probably like 6 or 7 times, and they made a point of it being like, I don't know where I'm from. I'm this lost kid. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I identify with. And
he's kind of accepted that he's fit in. Like, I think the guy at the wedding who says, what that makes you an American. You don't have to kind of choose. Yeah, you don't kind of have to choose where you're from.
And then that scene, the credits roll onto that song Nobody Knows. And that was like the one song that I sort of knew from this film, and I was like, it's a nice way to end the film as well.
Is that a famous song? Do I know?
No, but I'm not going to sing it now.
Come on, Jesse.
Nice try. I'm not going to sing it.
I was being sincere. I actually didn't know.
I thought you were setting me up there.
Like, this has got more than I bargained for.
Set me up.
I like the one of my favourite scenes was that I call it the Project Safari scene. That really great single shot highlighting the projects and going through. I think PJ taking him almost on that guided tour to discuss the government housing, and I think there's a quote or something where he says, "This is what our government gives us," and we know that in the film Barry is not fussed by politics in any way, and they make a point of making it out like, no, politics doesn't just mean I'm an arts kid sort of thing.
Yep.
But I just think they drop these subtle hints that, here's a guy that we know really wanted to inspire as much change as possible, and just planted a little seed of, this is what our government gives us, and it's like, oh, well, I wonder how I can fix that.
Yeah.
Become president of the country.
Yeah.
But it was a really good scene. I really like the way it was shot.
Anything else that stands out?
I really liked the end of the wedding when he walks out on Charlotte and goes pretty much onto like the golf bunker, and he's reading aloud.
Having another cigarette.
And he's reading aloud the letter that he wrote and never sent his dad, and where he signs off as Barack. I actually thought the movie was going to end there. I thought that was going to be a perfect ending for that movie, signing off there. Then you got the other scene afterwards, but I really liked him reading aloud the letter and hearing what he had to say.
Both those scenes kind of say the same thing, don't they? That last scene where he finally drops the name Barack for the first time, and then that other scene where he says, "I live here now," is him no longer defining himself by his past, because the whole film is basically him. I feel like he thinks he needs to choose between the black crowd, or not the white crowd, but the non-black crowd, effectively.
Yeah.
And he sort of, you can see him by the time his father passes away that he's definitely leaning more towards the black crowd, especially when he's at this wedding where everyone's like really nice to him, really polite, and making jokes when they're taking photos, and it's those Ugandan bartenders who he finally goes, "Oh, my dad died today."
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, "Why are you telling us this?"
Yeah.
He doesn't know who he identifies with until he speaks to James Boggs and Grace Lee, when they sort of just give him that little speech, not much to it, but
I didn't like that speech because it was like,
I know.
He's like,
it was almost too easy that was, is that all I needed to hear?
Well, we'd heard, again, he's like talking about, I'm from Jakarta, I'm from Honolulu, and then it's like, makes him American, you don't have to choose. I was just like, oh.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's inspiring for others.
No, I don't think that was done well enough, because this whole film was about this guy trying to find who he is, and it took obviously a very famous person to tell him, but tell him in such a easy way. I did like the fact that it was Charlotte's mum goes, why did she want you to speak to us? He's like, I think it's because you mixed race.
Yeah.
And as soon as they kind of like wiped that clear, he was listening more than he would to other people, and that was okay, but it wasn't enough for him to turn things around completely. I didn't quite see that enough.
No, and like that scene where he's at the bar and there's a Ugandan guys, and he's like, he just picked up from their accent that he knew they were from Uganda. I was like, you're good, but you're not that good.
He might be.
Surely not. All right, I'm ready to move on to some stuff that annoyed me.
The one thing I really liked...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Come on, Jesse.
I really liked the And Tahita's point about that scene where he's sitting in the bunker at the end, I like the juxtaposition of him sitting in the bunker compared to him sitting on campus. That very first scene where he's sitting on the campus, from eager to take on life compared to basically searching unsuccessfully for answers, and how that college New York City life has kind of stripped his ideals, but it's got him thinking deeper about his purpose. I really like that because those two scenes were so similar and just talks about a completely different part of his life and where he's at. So, really nice job.
Cool. What annoyed you about this film, Heath?
To be honest, not much.
Good.
And the main thing, and not even annoyed me, was just, I guess it kind of did, the scene that the montage kind of scene when you were talking about before, the song that was played over the top of it.
Didn't even pay attention.
It was All Along the Watchtower, which is a very famous song by Bob Dylan that's been covered many times.
Yeah.
And the cover of this song, I just thought was a really bad version of it. Like,
fair enough.
It came on straight away, and I'm like, oh, it's All Along the Watchtower. I'm like, oh, this person's ruined it. So that was probably my main complaint of the film, was I didn't like the cover of All Along the Watchtower.
One song. So for me, the way that the racism was dealt with annoyed me a lot. And I don't know whether this is because I like the way that, like, Get Out is a film that's really strong in my mind, and I really like the way that Get Out deals with race. And I don't know whether, I think this film's probably a little bit too explicit. It's too, like, a little bit too in your face at times. So I made a list of, like, these little things that, you know, sort of, I was like, you can do it in a different way rather than just putting it in your face. So, like, you know, one of the first scenes is on the train. It's like, you've got to get off the train here because there's police activity. It's like, you know, the security on campus wanting to see the ID, the white guy drinking, not getting in trouble. You know, there's a lot of slavery comments, speaking just white enough, he's the only black person in these classes. You know, he has that race with Charlotte to the tree, and it's like, oh, a race myth's debunked. It's like, come on, we know that black people are humans. We don't care that they're fast or those sorts of things.
There was a lot of it, you're right.
Yeah, and, like, you know, you've got those religious dudes that are preaching in the streets and calling white people.
I didn't like those guys, actually, now that I think about it.
Devils. You know, and then there's multiple comments about, oh, you know, you're not that black. It's like, I don't know. They and then, like, you know, they sort of topped it off with that scene in the bathroom where the guy tips him for giving him the towel.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, it's like, and then everyone's watching him because he's with a white girl. It was just annoying. And
that one got me the most, when everyone's watching him with the white girl and he became explicitly aware of it.
It was just like, you've been with her the whole film. It's like, you know, you can do this in a way that's a bit more, I don't know. It just did my head in a little bit, because I was like, we get that this is how he's feeling, but we can work that out without you being so explicit in our faces.
So I got the feeling that every single one of those situations were actual situations or scenes from his book.
Okay.
They're like, oh, we want to do this, we want to say this, we want to say like that. You can tell that the one of him in the bathroom giving the towel. I bet you 1,000% that happened.
Absolutely, that would have happened.
And I get that. It just, I don't know. I was just.
No,
like,
I agree. You're making a film though.
We're smart enough.
You need to take your own creative license with it.
Yeah, we're smart enough to work that out. And, you know, there's a comment like where it was like, you know, he says, "Oh, I'm expected to think on behalf of all black people." I'm like, that's a really huge thing to think, that you're taking the weight of, you know, that on your shoulders.
Was that when he was telling his mum that,
though? His mum,
that was in context of the classroom, though, because he's like the only black person in the class. So they look at him and says, you know, I'm expected to speak on behalf of everyone because I'm the only one here that can in this classroom.
Yeah, and I don't know. To me, it was just like...
It also shows him as a really flawed character, which he is at the time.
Yeah,
absolutely very flawed.
What did you think about this invisible man thing? So he was, you know, referred to as this invisible man on the basketball court, and he got this nickname
by PJ. Yeah.
And, like, you know, he goes to that book vendor, and he gets that book, and he's like, we've been waiting for a sequel for such a long time. I was like, oh, you're sort of making this implication that your life is going to be the sequel to this invisible man. I was like, oh, maybe a little bit corny.
I didn't get that.
I was like...
That's clever. I like that.
I was like, I don't know. There were a few... Yeah, it just sort of got to me a little bit. And there's one scene where he's in this bar, and this cross-dresser comes up to him and was like, you know, do you like to party? And then I was like, why?
What do you mean by party?
What was the point of that scene?
Yeah, it's true. Nothing happened
with that.
Maybe it just happened to him, so they wanted to include it.
And for, like, you know, the way that he treated Charlotte, and he's like, he said one line like, just because you spent 5 days in Kenya doesn't mean that, you can understand me. I was like, that's not needed. She's done so much for you. There's no need to show
He
you as a
often didn't
character.
treat her anywhere near as well as she treated
You're
him.
talking about it from if this guy's a bloke and you were hanging out with him, you'd be like, that's not fair, that's not good enough. But this film is trying to paint him as that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if this is one character that's put together from multiple women, you're saying, okay, so that's the way he treated all these women in his life?
Yeah, in a sense, you're right. You've got to be a little bit careful with that.
Because I can't imagine him being like that with every girlfriend he had.
I think to your point, all the little snippets of his life they wanted to give us, they were too explicit by doing it.
Yeah.
I think they could have been a lot more subtle doing it. It's almost like, just in case you're not sure what we're trying to say, here it is again.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with those negatives, because to your point, Heater, I don't think there was no particular scene that stood out to me where I was just like, oh, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
It was almost just a little bit too safe, that it was really easy to follow and to be honest, quite enjoyable as a film, but not all that controversy where it could have been controversial, because they were just, as I
Playing
said,
it safe.
Yeah, they were playing it safe, and they were just like reiterating the same points again and again, which is nice, but it's the difference between it being a great film and a good film.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. That's, good summary.
In general, I think the best part of this film for me was the fact that, as stupid as this sounds, it's a story or a portion of his life that anyone can resonate to. And I'm not saying from a racism perspective, and I'm not saying from the fact that this guy turns out to be a president, because none of us can resonate with that. But
Not yet.
You can't. You weren't born there. You can't.
But he does a really good job of making you forget from time to time that it's actually Obama. And it's just this guy called Barry who's really trying to figure out where he fits in the world. And I think he did that really well.
I guess, I think if you didn't read kind of what the movie was about, like, you wouldn't have known. I don't think there was nothing in the movie to suggest who he was. I think that you hypothetically could have gone through this movie not knowing that this guy was Barack Obama.
Yep. That's very true.
Yeah.
Even though I reckon there'd be about less than 1% of people who would have been watching the film in that situation. I don't think the director can ever assume that. But it's a good point you make. Wouldn't that be a nice twist?
Yeah.
It was Obama!
Yeah. When he signs up as Barack, you're like, hang on a second.
I know this guy.
That would have been awesome.
I think this film had a lot of stuff that it was trying to say. In an hour 40 film, there's a lot that it was trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was explicit about what it
Very
was.
explicit.
Well.
So obviously it was explicit about race.
Yeah.
And the one line that stood out was like, why does everything have to be about slavery? And that was one thing that sort of it was brought up a couple of times.
And it didn't even fit. It was like, hang on, you just forced slavery into this conversation. I wasn't thinking about slavery.
And I think the dude on campus was like, oh, it's 1981, get over it or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know, not much about the film's been about slavery.
No, it wasn't. Although both conversations with that guy
was
were.
about it.
Yeah.
True. Father-son relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the start, like in that opening monologue from the letter from the father, he says, I'm happy with you, son. So we're told straight away that the dad's happy with how his son's going, but Barry not so much with his dad.
Well, you have no sense that they don't have a relationship and they've only met once or whatever.
Yeah.
Until an hour in or maybe 45 minutes in, you're like, oh, really? I just assumed that you guys talked all the time.
Yeah.
And obviously we spoke about it before. It's about, where are you from? Trying to figure out who you are and fitting in. Like that invisible man thing again.
Yeah.
And I think Charlotte said something along the lines of like, she thought the whole problem for him was being invisible, whereas it was more that, the opposite. He fits in nowhere.
Yeah. Well, he thinks he fits in nowhere because he probably overthinks what he should be doing. And that's just a whole thing of discovery and knowing oneself, which clearly he went through a big phase of.
There was a bit about like democracy and learning as well. Like there was a lot of little like background noises and sort of classroom conversations about, Obama made a comment about sacrificing independence from the government for security and things like that, which I was like, that's nice sort of planting the ground of where he's going to go. I like that. I thought that was good. And like you said, college isn't about learning, it's about training. So it's not about him learning stuff, because we could see he was pretty intelligent already. It was about him.
It was a smart guy, yeah.
It's funny you point those things out because they're really subtly done and nicely done. And I also think the way that they never use his name because they want to keep it as, no, we're telling a story about 12 months in a man's life. It's completely irrelevant that he's president.
It's just someone's story, yeah.
Yeah, and those subtleties are done really well, but then you talk about the themes of it, and they're done, I think, really clunky. But so he can get that subtlety right, and you just wonder if he had got the themes right. It could have been a real belter of a film.
Well, so this guy Will, he was meant, you see from the opening scene that he wasn't there when he arrived in the first place. So like, what was it saying about friendship with this guy? Was Will's point more to be another racist character?
That's interesting. I actually wanted to bring up to you guys where does Will fit in all of this, because he was a pretty likable guy. He was nice. They weren't. I wouldn't ever say they were close friends.
No,
they were just roommates that were stuck together.
Exactly. Yeah, I just would have said he's
I thought
just
Will,
a nice enough
Will
guy.
was an ordinary guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
Why?
he took him to that party, the first party they went to, and he fobbed him off straight away. Like, went into the party and he's off with other mates, and he's like, oh, bye, and left him by himself.
Yeah,
I was like, straight up, it's like, oh, this guy, not a very nice guy. And then you see him in a bar again later on, and he sees Barry, and he's like, pretending he doesn't know him. And then at the end they have that conversation in that cafe, and he's
Let
like,
him move
oh,
out.
yeah, move out. And he's like, but yeah, it was like, yeah, okay, don't really want
I
to see it.
didn't get that vibe from him.
Yeah,
but
I
then
don't think I see it
I was
that way.
wondering where he fit in. I'm like,
yeah.
why do we keep going back to this guy? What's his role? But maybe that was it. But I didn't quite get that.
Yeah.
We spoke about that dinner scene at the wedding, and it was like another sort of cringy quote, but it was like, you take the baton from the ones who came before you, and you take it as far as you can, because life is a beautiful struggle. I was like, this whole year's been a struggle for him.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, it was a corny line, but it was nice in that fitting with what the film's been about.
Saying that, we'll trailblaze as far as we can go,
yeah.
and when we're got nothing left in the tank, you have a go.
Yep,
Yeah.
pretty much. Sorry.
Is that an explicit race thing?
That's a good one. I don't think.
I don't think it is
No.
actually when you break it down. But when I heard it, I thought it was. I thought it was saying we've struggled through black suppression or racism throughout the years, and it'll get better, but now it's your turn to do it. And I was kind of like, well, what sort of message is that? Like,
I think that's how I portrayed it originally as a race thing, but it shouldn't be.
no, it definitely doesn't have to be.
It should be, for all walks of life.
Yeah. Which is a good thing, I think, looking on reflection.
It's a parental thing.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
it is.
It's
Yeah,
a paternal thing.
Yeah.
Which he didn't have. That's not fair. He didn't have great paternal figures, but he probably lacked a little bit in that area, despite his mum being fine. But
Yeah. All right. So, is there anything what else can we take from this film? I thought the production values were pretty good for a small sort of film. Good production values. It sort of gave me this midday movie sort of vibe, like Hallmark Channel, lunchtime TV. That's what it gave me. Like, it wasn't like a big blockbuster that you have to go and see the film at the cinemas.
definitely,
but it was like,
good talkability though. I feel like when you're watching it, you're going to be able to talk about it with someone.
Yeah.
Which is why we do
Definitely.
these podcasts.
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have been horrible in a cinema. Like, you can sit back and enjoy that on a big screen.
It would have been fine in the cinema, to be honest. It would have actually been quite enjoyable.
We wouldn't find anywhere really.
Yeah.
But not overly required. Like, we watched Spectral a couple of weeks ago, and that's the one film that we've done on Netflix that I'm like, this should have been on the big screen.
Yeah.
We're missing it. We're missing out because it wasn't on the big screen.
IMDb.
I did Will. I did
Aye.
Ellar Coltrane from Boy.
Yep.
I was
Boyhood.
Boyhood.
Yep.
Boyhood, yeah, right, yeah.
Boy's a good Kiwi film. If
I
anyone
was going to
wants
say,
watch
why don't I know Boy? Yeah.
Boy's a great film.
Boyhood, you're right. But I was 99% sure it was him. I just want to double check. He looked shorter in this. Because he was in that movie with Tom Hanks and Emma Watson about, it was like the Steve Jobs kind, The Circle.
The Circle.
He was in The Circle and...
Yeah.
Cool.
Peter?
Mine was for Charlotte's father,
Okay.
because he came on and I was like, oh, I know you from somewhere.
What TV show?
I was going to say...
He's from Vikings.
Ah.
He plays King Egbert in Vikings from about season 2 onwards.
Okay. Well, the first thing, Charlotte rocked up on the screen. I'm like, I don't need an IMDb. You're from Split and Glass.
Yeah,
right?
we went and saw Glass a couple of weeks ago.
I was like, bang, that's fine. The thing that I did look up, I didn't IMDb, but when Barry and his mum go to the cinema, and they're in that cinema, and it's called Orfeo Negro, the film. So I was like, I'm intrigued with like why they've chosen this film for them to sit out and watch. And obviously, like the mum said, it's a beautiful and exotic film, just like your dad, sort of thing. So I was like, oh, what's this film? Actually?
That was a weird line as well.
Yeah.
She spoke about his dad like he's a thing, not a...
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it's, in English it's called Black Orpheus, and it's a retelling of an ancient legend of Orpheus and Eurydice. So it's like it's a fateful love story. So I guess that sort of ties in with him and his mum and his dad,
Okay.
like that this fateful love that didn't really work. So I liked that. I thought that was cool. And the other thing I looked up was they saw that, or it was the place was called Film Forum. I was like, it's like it's Flix Forum. So it's an independent cinema in New York that's still running today. So
there you
we
go.
should strike up a partnership with them.
Yeah.
the Film Forum in New York City. So I'm keen to go check that place out.
Gonna have
If
to,
you're
yeah.
from Film Forum, let us know. We can sort out some sort of contra.
All right, what are some questions we've got from this film?
I had one.
Yeah.
Did you notice he wore a ring on his wedding ring finger?
Oh,
The entire film had a ring on his left ring finger.
wow.
I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Oh, well, maybe he just wore a ring there. Like, people wear rings on their wedding ring finger.
Do they?
Do they?
Yeah.
No, they don't.
No, they do. You don't have. It's not like a law.
Really?
Yeah. You'll see plenty of females, especially, will wear.
I thought they was it on the right finger though. If it's the ring finger,
Not
it
necessarily.
was on the right. But yeah, that was one
Good
straight
pickup.
away. I was like,
Very
wow, that
observant.
Again,
it threw me.
surely that's something that he would have done. Like that's a conscious decision
Yeah.
to do that. It must have been.
It just threw me from the start. I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Good pickup.
That's my one.
You should have looked it up.
This question I had like while I was watching it was like, he was this character that like was self-doubting the whole time, everything he did. So like, I guess the thing, I know it's only a year in his life, but like, when did this sort of devotion to the public service begin? Like,
I think that development at the end happened way too quickly
Quick,
without showing us how it happened.
Yeah.
They literally, that conversation that he has with James Boggs is almost just like, and that was it, and that's how we created Barack
That's
Obama.
the trigger, and we're on from
I
here.
know
like, surely 1981 wasn't that an important? It's an
Yeah.
important year, but not that important.
Yeah. Look, I'm actually glad they kept it at 1 year. Like,
Yeah, that was good not to expand it, and would have kind of they could have.
I was waiting for like someone
drag
to
it
come
out.
and, oh, this is Michelle. I'm like, oh, there's Michelle.
Yeah,
and like,
yeah.
oh, this is, you want to join the debating team?
Yeah.
But I like the fact they didn't really go into politics. They never discussed any like goals for presidency.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that.
He doesn't meet Michelle for years later after this film even, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, why does this film exist?
Well, so one of my questions is, does this film make you want to learn more about Barack Obama?
Yep.
Now I wonder if they're tied into each other. They want to. You can't deny that they're probably cashing in on the fact that
the popularity of him at the time.
here's a nice story about, like, he's probably the most influential person in the world at this point in time, right? And you've got from an entertainment perspective, you've got a really small window of when you can sell this story.
Yeah.
Not that in 10 years he's going to have less of a legacy, but let's capitalise on it right now. And it's got to have a lot to do with that. And they can say as much as they want, this is a story that we wanted to tell, and we read the book and we thought, we have to get this story on the screen. But there's a huge element of trying to get this story out to try and capitalise. Everyone's talking about Obama right now. Here's another slice of his life.
I think it's like possibly the first time that a film's been made about a sitting president and released while they're still president. Is it poor by the filmmakers to like have this film released where there's drug use, lots of smoking?
He's not a great guy.
No, and like you think about
He's not a bad guy.
You think about
he's not
the
he's
big
not bad.
president films like JFK, they're done. Obviously he's died and all that sort of stuff, but they're all done post them being a president. Would this film have been more effective if it was made 10 years later?
I don't think there's enough.
Wouldn't have mattered.
There's enough big stuff that happens in it.
Yeah. Just because it's all based on that 1 year of when he's at college. Yeah, it's not kind of, like the JFK movie kind of about, his assassination and stuff. There's nothing really.
But do we also think it's a sign of the times? There's more movies being created now
Than ever before,
per year than ever before, and there's a lot more stories that people want to be telling, and maybe it's going to happen more and more. And this was what, 2016, end of 2016, and this is the start of it.
So, would this film have been more effective if it wasn't about Obama? Like, if it was just this
that's
story?
a great
This story
question,
could have
This could have been about anyone.
Anyone, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the charm of it, wasn't it? But I don't think it would.
I may have liked this film more if it wasn't about him. If it was just about
But would you have watched it?
in the
Yeah.
first
Would you have
place?
watched it if it was just about something?
It's just if you just make it about a aimless guy who's struggling in life.
But you saw this movie
But is he
before we did this
how-
podcast.
how much is he
So would you have
struggling?
watched it before we did this podcast? You just watched it.
Probably not.
Would you have done it if
It's a
it wasn't
good-
about Barack?
Probably not.
Because I 100% agree.
I remember when it released, and
Yeah.
I sat down with my partner and we watched it because it's like, here's a movie.
Which you
about
might not
Obama.
have done if it was just about any kind of.
But going back and watching it now, if it was about a different character, I could have been like, wow, this is a really great film because you know you have so much context about Obama, so you know about what he becomes, what happens after. Whereas if you have no context about this character, you're like, wow, this guy.
I guess they've got to get you to watch it in the first place to realise that.
If it's done by a nameless character, do they need to end it differently? Do they need to give you more, or are you satisfied that he's come around? Because I love the character development in this, and I actually think that I'm not going to do hand signals because you can't see it if you're watching. But he starts with these values and ideals, and he completely loses them, and life sort of crushes him down and confuses him and makes him figure out what he wants to be and where he becomes. And he comes out on the other side, but it's not as clear as I sort of touched on before. I don't believe it as much as...
Because they want you to fill the gaps in, like, about what happens after.
Yeah. So if this is just a story about a guy in college who goes through, a bit of a rough year of self-discovery, how do you end that? Do you end it the way it ends and go, okay, this guy's come out all right?
End of the way it ends. And that's a good art house film.
I agree, but I think that because we know... I don't think they ended it well enough in this.
No,
but you let it go because you know where he ends up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess you know the rest of the story.
He didn't become president until 2008 or whatever it was, so you've still got 30
25
years, 25 years that you can fill in. Well, okay. Anything else?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we went pretty well. Todd, my dog, barked.
Oh, Todd update. We haven't had a Todd update in a long time.
I know. It's been
Where
really...
are the animals in this movie?
The dogs that were barking.
Oh, yes, of course.
I was like, do I touch on it now?
I'm looking at horses, thinking, where are the horses?
How did Todd go?
Didn't like those dogs at all.
No.
So the first time they came on that abandoned block, he was barking right back at him. And the second time, like, oh, God, like it's happening again. But then Barry wasn't concerned by the dogs, so Todd wasn't.
Read human emotion.
He was sitting on my lap, and I tried to put my foot in front of his face so he couldn't see the telly at the time, though.
Clever. All right, so let's go around the table. As usual, we give a rating out of 5. Hida, kick us off with your rating out of 5.
My rating. So, I really enjoyed this film. I thought they did a great job of portraying his struggles with his race and his identity. I found it really interesting, and Devon Terrell, I thought, did an amazing job acting. I gave it 3.5 out of 5.
Good.
We didn't touch on him enough. I know we said how good he was, but
he was brilliant.
He was
brilliant.
But like, he hasn't gone on to do too much else.
I know. He's born to play Obama. He's waiting for the next Obama film.
Yeah. MJ.
Yeah, I enjoyed this movie from start to finish, but nothing really more than a general enjoyment level. So it didn't blow my socks off. I thought the performance from Devon Terrell was outstanding, and I thought the character arc, whilst it wasn't quite a full development of Barry, was quite intriguing, and I found the story engaging, relatable enough, as relatable it could have been for a future US president. The themes explored were still really relevant societal concerns today, and I hope that isn't lost on the audience watching it now. All round a decent movie, 3 stars.
Sweet. So for me, this film was about walking the streets of New York, race, cigarettes, and basketball. Could have been about anyone. So like, did we really need this story? So it was really well made, but it was a bit of a nothing story. But I'm going to give it 3 stars still. So, Hida, let's average our score out of 5 and give us our Flix Forum rating.
It gets a 3.17 out of 5.
We'll round that up to 2. 3.2, I reckon. Be generous. Let's be generous.
3.17 it is.
Right? I think it was a good film. If someone said, hey, I'm thinking about watching Barry on Netflix, what do you reckon? What do you say?
Ooh. Watch it.
Yeah, because that's the thing.
Watch it. Watch it.
You don't, no context needed, just watch it.
Yeah.
Sit back, watch it.
Because you will enjoy it.
Yeah. So, social media, we love our social media. Put a question up there every week. This week, it's not a really deep sort of question, but we want to know, what did you learn about Obama from this film? Just something. Something about Obama.
The first thing that I actually wrote in my notes, which we never got to because we kind of went past it too quickly, just had no idea that he was referred to as Barry.
Barry, yeah. So that could be a good learning curve.
One was that I didn't know he was a chain smoker.
You learn a ton about him.
I didn't know he was that mean to girls.
I got a feeling if you asked him, he'd argue that a little bit.
Yeah.
So, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we are at Flix Forum. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Get on there, subscribe, rate, whatever you can to help us out. Next week, we are going to be looking at the 2017 heist film, Coin Heist. It's directed by Emily Haggins, stars Sasha Petrus, Alexis G. Zhao, Alex Saxon, Jay Walker, Neil Huff, Michael Cyril Crichton, and Mark Bloom. So please take the time, watch the film, get on board with us, and enjoy. Thanks again with a good one.
Thanks, boys.
Very good one.
Been fun.
And we will see you guys next week.
We will.
See you next week.
Bye.